The story you're going to hear today is, to say the least, unbelievable. She talks about love, about pain, about deep disappointment, and about something that no one would expect. Imagine discovering that the person you love, who you swore you knew, who you defended tooth and nail against any suspicion, was, in fact, living a double life, or better, triple, quadruple. This is the story of Julia, a woman like so many of us, dedicated, generous, intelligent, and passionate. She always believed that love is built with respect and complicity. She spent years with the same man, building a life, dreams, plans. He was the one she saw growing old by her side. But when betrayal knocks on the door, it doesn't send a warning. It comes like an avalanche that tears the ground from under your feet. And that's how Julia felt when she discovered that her husband didn't just have one lover. There weren't two. There were three. Three women who, like her, believed they were in a real relationship with him. Three parallel love stories, woven on the basis of lies. Now stop for a second and imagine, if you were in her shoes, how would you react? Hatred? Revenge? War declared? Because what Julia did, no one could have predicted. She decided to go all the way, to meet the others, to understand, and in a way that still leaves everyone open-mouthed today. She made friends with all of them. But before that, there was a lot of pain. There were sleepless nights. There were muffled screams into the pillow, unanswered questions, and a broken heart. It all started on any given night with a cell phone left on the kitchen table. She wasn't the type to snoop. She'd never felt the need to. But something about that night, a sixth sense, a shiver down her neck, made her reach for her phone. It was a message with a heart. It didn't take much more for distrust to arise there. Days later, another clue. Missed call from a strange number, late at night. And then, instinct spoke louder. When she decided to investigate, Julia had no idea what she was about to discover. She thought she might perhaps come across a silly conversation. Who knows, maybe a one-off betrayal, the kind that you regret and try to forgive. But never. Could she ever imagine the size of the web that was behind that man she had known for more than 10 years? From that moment on, her life turned upside down. Each conversation discovered on the cell phone, each hidden detail, revealed another layer of the farce, and it was in one of these conversations that she saw the name of the first woman, after the second one, after the third. Her heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. She felt the ground disappear. She felt humiliated, deceived, used. But if instead of acting on impulse, she took a deep breath, and he decided, I will not be another woman destroyed by a man like that. I will understand everything until the end. And that was how Julia began a path that would change her life and the lives of those other women forever. Now I ask you, if it were you, what would you do? Could you keep calm, or would you go for immediate confrontation? Comment below. I really want to know your opinion. And of course, if this story has already caught your attention, subscribe to the channel and leave your like, because in the next chapters you will be even more surprised by what she experienced and how she turned this game around in a completely unexpected way.
Hello, my name is Julia, and honestly, I still don't really know how I'm managing to write all this. It feels like I'm living inside a never-ending nightmare. It all started a few weeks ago, but at the same time, it feels like years have passed. Such is the roller coaster of emotions I've experienced. Me and Dekwe have been together for over 10 years. Actually, we met in college. He was always a charismatic, confident, intelligent guy. And I, who had a history of complicated relationships, believed that I had finally found someone who treated me with respect and love. We built a life together. We bought an apartment. We traveled. We made plans to have children. I trusted him with my eyes closed. You know, that person who you defend even when others speak badly of them. That's how I was with Kyle. But it all came crashing down that night when he forgot his cell phone in the kitchen. It was just another Tuesday. He had gone out for a run and, without realizing it, left his cell phone on the table. I wasn't one to mess with him. I always respected his privacy. But that night, I felt something strange. A strong intuition, a shiver that made me look at the device as if it was shouting at me, "Look here, something is wrong." It was almost involuntary. I picked up my phone, and when I unlocked it, the first thing that appeared was a WhatsApp notification, a message with a heart and "I love you, my love." My world stopped at that moment. I felt a chill run up my spine. My first impulse was to deny it. I thought, it must be a friend, someone from the family, a joke. But deep down, I already knew. I opened the conversation. It was with a woman named Renata. The messages left no doubt. They were in a relationship. They had met a few days ago. They had pictures together, passionate words. My hand was shaking so much that I almost dropped the phone. My heart was racing. I was breathless. I spent hours rereading those messages. Every word hurt like a knife. When Kyo came back from the race, I couldn't say anything. I was in shock. I just lay down on the bed and pretended to be asleep. But from that moment on, something inside me changed. I decided I needed to know the whole truth. In the following days, I began to observe every detail. He was acting strange, more distant. I started noticing messages he deleted, calls at odd times, excuses that didn't add up. So, one of the days he went out running again. I managed to unlock his phone again. That's when I discovered the second woman, Patricia. Another conversation full of declarations of love, of plans. Another woman who clearly had no idea that he had a life with me, and with someone else besides her. It was there that I realized that I was not dealing with a simple betrayal. I was standing before a man who led a triple life. I cried all night. I woke up the next day with puffy eyes, unable to look at my own reflection in the mirror. But that wasn't all. In an almost masochistic impulse, I continued investigating. Eu Nideto, know how far that lie went. It was then that I discovered the third woman, Camila. Once again, the same pattern. Affectionate messages, declarations, meeting arrangements. I didn't know what to think. How could someone do this? How could he manage 3 relationships at once? How could I have been so blind? I spent days in shock. My world had fallen apart. Everything I believed about Kaio, about our story, was a lie. But in the midst of all this pain, an idea began to grow inside me. Something that, honestly, I don't even know how to explain properly. I didn't want to just confront him and make a fuss. I didn't want to take revenge, nor to play the victim. I wanted to understand. Who were those women? Did they know about me? Were they being deceived as much as I was? It was then that I made a decision that no one around me supported. I decided to contact each of them. I knew it would be risky. That could go very wrong. But deep down, I felt I needed to hear their versions directly from them. I started with Renata. I found her profile on social media. I sent a direct message, with my heart in my hand. "Hi, my name is Julia. I think we need to talk about Kaio. It's important." It took her a whole day to respond. When she answered, she was completely confused. We arranged to meet at a discreet cafe. I went in trembling, not knowing what to expect. When we saw each other, the first thing I noticed was the look in her eyes, scared, vulnerable. She didn't know anything. I thought Kaio was single and that he was starting a relationship with her. When I told her my story, she cried. She was in shock. There, I realized that we were both victims of the same lie. After the conversation, we hugged. It was a very painful moment, but also liberating. From there, I decided to do the same with the process was equally difficult. But in each of these conversations, the reaction was the same. Shock, sadness, anger. None of them knew he was married. None of them knew of the existence of the others. It was a hard blow for all of us. But, also an unexpected point of connection. Instead of hating or competing with each other, we find comfort in each other. We became a kind of mutual support. Today, I look back and can hardly believe everything I experienced, but this is far from over. After I talked to Renata, The feeling that remained was a mixture of pain and relief. It was like, for the first time in weeks, I had someone who understood exactly what I was feeling. We had both been deceived by the same man, in the same way. She cried a lot when we met. So did I. We hugged each other like two strangers who suddenly found their lives intertwined by a cruel thread of lies. But it wasn't just for me or for her. I knew there were still two women missing from that story, and I wouldn't be able to move forward without knowing their side too. As soon as I got home, I took a long shower. I let the hot water run down my body, trying to wash away some of that dirty feeling that the betrayal had left me with. But inside, the pain still burned. I picked up my phone and took a deep breath. This time, I sent a message to I used the same words I sent to Renata. "Hi, my name is Julia. I think we need to talk about Kaio. It's important." It took a few hours for her to visualize it. When he finally responded, her reaction was immediate. "What do you mean? What kind of conversation? What do you want with him?" It was understandable. She didn't know who I was. To her, I could be anyone. But I took a deep breath and was as honest as possible. "I've been married to him for 10 years. I found out he's in a relationship with you. I'm not here to fight. I just want us to talk." After a few minutes of silence, the answer came. "You're lying. Kaio said he was single. We've been together for almost a year." My heart dropped. Almost a year, while he slept with me every night. He made plans with another woman on the side. I explained everything in more detail. I sent photos of me with him, proof of our relationship. She was in shock. She said she needed time to process it. The next day, she came to me herself. "I want to talk to you in person. I need to understand all of this." We met at a park. When we saw each other, she was pale and haggard, the lost look as if he still didn't believe what he was experiencing. We talked for hours. She told how she met Kyo at a party hosted by a mutual friend, how he said he was a man tired of superficial relationships and wanted something serious, and how, for months, he was the most attentive man she had ever met. "He called me every night," she said. "He said he thought about me all the time. How could he do this to all of us?" I had no answer. We hugged. Once again, I found in another woman someone who, like me, was suffering in the same way. There was no rivalry. There was no competition. Just two women torn apart by the same lie. Now, it was Missy Camila. This was the one I was most afraid to contact. In the messages I saw on Kaio's cell phone, she seemed to be the most emotionally involved. He used even stronger words with her. He called her my future wife, my life, my everything. My heart sank just remembering it. Still, I took a deep breath and wrote the message. "Hi, my name is Julia. I think we need to talk about CO. It's important." It took her almost 2 days to respond. I confessed that I began to think that there would be no return, but when he answered, it came straight out. "If you're another one of those crazy exes who wants to push us away, don't even waste your time." It hurt a lot, but I took a deep breath and continued. "I'm not his ex. I'm his wife. We've been together for 10 years. I don't want to push you away. I want you to know the truth." Silence for hours. The next day, new message. "If that's true, I want to see you. I want to look into your eyes and know if you're lying or not." We met at a discreet coffee shop. When she arrived, I saw a beautiful, young woman with a glow that now seemed dull. We looked at each other for long seconds, not knowing how to begin, until I pulled a photo of Kaio and me out of my pocket on our last wedding anniversary. She looked, silence. Then, I took out my cell phone and showed other conversations, other photos. She became paler and paler until she started crying right there. "He said he wanted to marry me at the end of the year," she sobbed. "He said I was the woman of his life." The pain I saw on her face was the same as the pain I saw on Patricia's and on Rana, and it was the same one that had been eating me up inside since it all started. We ended the conversation with a hug. There, once again, two women who were supposed to be rivals were supporting each other amidst the ruins that Kaio had left. After talking to the three of them, I felt drained. There was no longer any doubt. He had 3 parallel lives, 3 women who, like me, believed in a future with him. I spent days processing all of that. I knew I needed to face Kaio, but before that, I decided to propose something to the girls. I created a group on WhatsApp with the 4 of us, me, Renata, Patricia, and Camila. I explained that I didn't want us to be alone in this, that we could support each other and decide together what to do. They agreed, and there, an unlikely friendship was born. We started talking every day. We cried together, laughed at the absurdity of the situation, exchanged messages of strength. The most amazing thing is that there was no resentment between us. On the contrary, we became a support network. Meanwhile, Kaio continued to pretend that nothing was happening. I was preparing for the big moment, the final showdown. The WhatsApp group I created with Renata, a patrician Tokamal, ended up becoming my refuge. It was like a safe space in the midst of chaos. In the early days, the conversation didn't stop. Each one told how they met Kaio, how he had won them over, what lies he had told. It was impressive. He had constructed a different narrative for each of us. For Renata, said he was a man tired of shallow relationships, who wanted true love. For Patricia, he presented himself as a busy guy who was focused on his career, but who had fallen in love with her and wanted to build a solid relationship. For Camila was the romantic, marriageable man who had waited his whole life for someone like her. As I read each account, I felt a knot in my stomach. How did he do it? How did he sustain so many lies? Furthermore, it was clear that he manipulated our feelings in a calculated way. He alternated between moments of intense attention and phases of distance, which he explained as being because of work, because of family problems, because of personal issues. It was a perfect script for emotional manipulation. As we exchanged messages, a strength was born between us that I never imagined. We became friends. Yes, friends. It may seem strange, but there we were. For women, victims of the same man, united by a common pain, and together we started planning what to do. There was a consensus among us that we didn't want to simply disappear or let Kaio continue with his farce. He needed to be confronted. I needed to face what I had done. We spent hours discussing ways to do this. The idea of a joint conversation soon arose. We wanted to meet him in person and expose him there, face to face. It was risky, but deep down, we knew it would be the closure each of us needed to move on. We spent a few nights working out the plan, until we decided the approach would be, on Saturday, at a restaurant he used to frequent, I would arrange a dinner with him. About that, Renata, Patrician Camel, be on standby, waiting outside. At the right moment, they would enter. So he would have no way to escape. He would have to face us. The week leading up to that Saturday was one of the most stressful of my life. On the outside, I tried to maintain a normal appearance. Inside, my heart was beating wildly the whole time. Every time Sio hugged me, every kiss he gave me, I felt a deep disgust. But he pretended. I needed to hold the mask until the right moment. On Saturday, I woke up with a lump in my throat. I knew that would be a decisive day. We exchanged messages in the group until the last minute. We were all nervous, but determined. At dusk, I got ready with great care. I wore a dress that Kaio loved and put on light makeup. He came home excited, as if nothing had happened. He kissed my face and said, "Today, it's just us, my love." I needed this. I almost vomited at those words, but he smiled and said, I needed it too. We went to the restaurant together. Along the way, I tried to act as naturally as possible. My cell phone, in my pocket, vibrated from time to time with messages from the girls. We're here. Everything's fine. We're going in shortly. We arrived. We sat at the table. He ordered a wine. We toasted. I could barely swallow anything. His heart felt like it was going to explode in his chest. So, I sent the agreed message in the group. Now, minutes later, I saw the restaurant door open. Renata entered first, right behind Patricia, and finally, Camila. Kaio's face was a scene I will never forget. He froze. The glass of wine he was holding almost fell out of his hand. The girls came straight to our table. The silence in the restaurant was total. It seemed like all eyes were on us. Camila was the first to speak, with a trembling but firm voice. Hi Kaio, aren't you going to introduce me to your wife? He was livid. He looked at me, at the girls, and back at me. I tried to open my mouth, but no words came out. Renata completed. That's right Kaio, it seems like your perfect life fell apart, huh? Patricia, holding back tears, said, I loved you, and you made me believe I was the only one. How could you? I, who had been silent until that moment, took a deep breath and said, Enough, Kaio. It's over. The four of us know everything, and you're going to hear it now. There, in that restaurant hall, we did what we came to do. Each of us said everything that was stuck in our throats. He tried to deny it at first. He tried to say that it was a misunderstanding, that it wasn't quite like that, but given the evidence we had, printouts, photos, messages, there was no escape. With each word, his face grew paler. It was like watching a mask fall off in slow motion. When it was over, we stood up. He sat there with his hands on his head, not knowing what to do. We went out together. At the restaurant door, we hugged, we cried, we laughed nervously, but most of all, we felt immense relief. We had closed that cycle. In the days that followed, Kaio tried everything. He sent messages to me, to them, apologizing, saying he had gone crazy, that he loved us. No one answered. We block on everything. Today, the WhatsApp group continues to exist. It has become a space where we share our lives, our pains, and now, our joys too. We created a bond that I never imagined could be born from so much pain. But the story doesn't end here. There is still a development that no one expected. The days that followed the confrontation at the restaurant were strange. I lived them like someone who was on autopilot. On the one hand, there was a sense of relief. Finally, everything had come to light. It was no longer a secret hidden deep in my chest. On the other hand, there was an immense void. It was as if an entire castle I had spent years building had been demolished all at once. There wasn't a wall left standing. I came home that night with my head spinning. The Kia stayed at the restaurant. I don't know how he got out of there, or who he spoke to afterwards. In our WhatsApp group, the girls kept sending messages. You were amazing, Julia. We did what needed to be done. Now it's time to move on. I read everything with a tightness in my chest. Moving forward, how, after 10 years with that man, during the first 3 days, the Kaya treated everything. First, tearful messages. Forgive me, love. I was wrong, but I really love you. Then, attempts to minimize. You know, the others didn't mean anything. It was a bad phase. Then the blame is thrown at me. You made me so lonely sometimes. I felt needy. Each word was like a new dagger stuck in my chest. But I stood my ground. I didn't answer. I blocked his number on my cell phone, on social media, on everything. Still, he showed up at the door on the 5th day. He hit, he shouted. He said he needed to talk to me. I was alone. I felt scared, but I didn't open the door. I stood silently, locked away, as he begged outside. After almost an hour, he left. In the group, I told what happened. Renata, Patricia and Camilla, outraged. They were all going through the same thing. He tried to play dirty with each one. Sometimes he pretended to be sorry. Sometimes he used emotional blackmail. That's when Renata proposed one thing. Let's meet again. Just the 4 of us. We need to get stronger. We agreed right away. We arranged to have coffee on a Sunday afternoon. When we saw each other again, it was exciting. We hugged like old friends. We laughed, we cried, we let it all out. The pain we shared brought us together in a way that is difficult to explain. Each one was experiencing their own particular morning. But the most beautiful thing was realizing that, even with everything we went through, none of us hated each other. There was no rivalry. There was sisterhood. There, sitting in that coffee shop, we made a decision. Each of us would go on with our lives, but we would keep in touch. We would be a support network for each other. A Patricio said something that stuck with me. He thought he was going to pit us against each other. And in the end, he created 4 women who were united and much stronger. After that day, things started to change inside me. The feeling of guilt, which often invaded me, began to diminish. I began to understand that I was not to blame for anything. None of us were. The only person responsible for all that pain was that Kaio, but the reconstruction process was slow. For weeks, I cried alone in my room. Every corner of the house reminded me of him. His scent was still on the sheets. Our photos were still in the picture frame in the living room. I gradually removed everything, photo by photo, clothes by clothes, object by object. Every time I took a little piece of him out of my house, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. At the same time, I began to reconnect with my family and friends. For years, because of the relationship with the Kaio, I distanced myself from a lot of people. He was possessive, jealous, controlling, but now, it was my chance to get it all back. I started going out more, even though it was difficult at first. There was a huge fear of finding him somewhere, but I went, step by step. In the girls' group, we continued to hold firm. We talked every day. We celebrated every little victory. Today, I managed to get through the day without crying. I managed to sleep a whole night without a nightmare. I went out to dinner with my friends and I felt good. Each achievement of an era is celebrated by all. And little by little, I began to rediscover who I was without the For a long time, my identity was so tied to the idea of being his wife that I didn't even remember what I liked, what I wanted for myself. I went back to reading books that I loved. I resumed my photography course, which I had abandoned years before. I started taking better care of myself. It was a slow, painful, but liberating process. Meanwhile, the kayak kept trying. Every now and then, someone in our group would receive a new message from him. But by this time, we were all stronger. We knew that cycle had ended. As much as it hurt, and it hurt a lot, none of us considered going back. In fact, a curious fact happened. We started going out together, Jezanyu, Renata, Patricia, and we became real friends. We saw each other for lunch, coffee, and going out at night. It was as if something beautiful had been born from a tragedy. One day, at one of these meetings, the Camila these, have you ever stopped to think that if it weren't for Kayo, we would never have met? And today we are true friends. We all smiled. She was right. As much as he had destroyed us in so many ways, what we built together was real. Not that everything was 100% overcome. There were still bad days. There were still emotional relapses. But now, we were no longer alone. And that made all the difference. Oh, and just so you know, Kayo ended up moving away for good. Maybe he realized that he no longer had space in our lives. Today, when I look back, I still feel a little pain. But most of all, I feel proud. Proud to have faced all that, for not letting myself be destroyed, and having found, in the women he tried to manipulate, friends that I will have for life. But there is still a detail of this story that nobody knows. Something that happened later that changed my view of all this even more. The months went by. And, little by little, I got used to a new life. It was weird, you know. After so much time being Kiyo's wife, relearning how to live alone seemed like a daily challenge. But there was also a certain relief in that. The freedom I felt, after years of living under emotional control, was indescribable. Of course, not every day was easy. Some Sundays still hurt. Special dates came loaded with memories. But I had decided that I would not let the past define me. Plus, I now had a support circle I never imagined. Renata, Patricia, and Camel, our WhatsApp group was still going strong. We talked every day. We sent good morning messages, movie tips, rants, and, of course, gossip too. The friendship that was born from chaos grew stronger every day. In one of these conversations, a few weeks after the confrontation with Takayo, a Kamala brought some news. Girls, you won't believe it. He's already trying to be with another woman. She showed screenshots of a friend of hers who had received messages from Kiyo. No Instagram. It was unbelievable. We had barely closed that cycle and another one was already starting. The revolt was general in the group, but this time, we knew it wasn't our problem anymore. The important thing was that we were all out of that web of lies. Even so, I confess that something was bothering me. As much as I was focused on rebuilding my life, there were questions that kept running through my head. Why did I accept so many things in silence for so long? How did I let him manipulate me to this point? Were there other secrets that I never discovered? These questions wouldn't leave me alone. It was then that Renata said, Julia, have you ever thought about going to therapy? It helped me a lot. The idea made sense. I decided to seek professional help. I started having weekly sessions with a therapist, and it was transformative. In the first few sessions, I cried like a baby. I remembered situations that I myself had buried. I realized how emotionally fragile I was, but I also discovered a strength I didn't know I had. Over time, I came to understand the pattern of emotional abuse I experienced with Kayo. He was not just an unfaithful man. He was a manipulator, someone who constantly undermined my self-esteem. Realizing this was painful, but liberating, I started to regain my self-confidence. I started taking care of myself again. My dreams, my projects, photography, which I had taken up again, became a renewed passion. I started doing small jobs, and, little by little, I started to feel confident again. Meanwhile, in the group, our lives were also moving forward. A Patriciastic, a design course that I always wanted to do. A Renata, I was planning a solo trip for the first time. A Camilas started writing a blog about relationships and female empowerment. It was beautiful to see how each one was rebuilding their story. In the midst of all this, something unexpected happened. One night I got a call from my son's mother. CAIO. Yes, his mother. I was in shock. She has always been a very polite and sweet woman to me, although in recent years our contact has diminished considerably. Her own fault. Of course, Caio, who always encouraged me to distance myself from his family. I answered with a lump in my throat. She said, her voice trembling, "Julia, I know you don't want to know anything about my son anymore, and rightly so, but I needed to tell you something. I'm sorry for everything." I remained silent. She continued, "I just found out. I didn't know what he was doing. I'm embarrassed and heartbroken. You've always been wonderful to him and to us. And I wanted you to know that no matter what, I love you." That disarmed me. I cried on the phone. We talked for almost an hour. She said she had found conversations from Kayun, the computer, photos, messages. I was devastated. She said she had tried to talk to him, but he had pushed her away too. At the end of the call, she said, "You deserve so much more, Julia." Never doubt that it was a difficult conversation, but it brought me peace, knowing that his family didn't agree with that they recognized the pain he caused, was important to me. I shared everything with the girls in the group. Everyone was moved. It was like a small closing of another cycle. From then on, something in me began to change. I started to feel like I was really turning the page. The days became lighter, the memories less painful. The presence of Bitcoin, my mind, it was slowly fading away. And it was in this context that a new chapter began to take shape. At a photography event, I met a group of professionals in the field, among them, a very nice boy called Leonardo. At first, I was reluctant to approach. The fear of getting involved with someone again was enormous. But over time, conversations with Leonardo are becoming frequent. First, about work. Then, about life. He was different, kind, respectful, genuinely interested in listening to me. No rush, no forcing anything. We started hanging out as friends. Each meeting was light and pleasant. And so, very cautiously, I began to allow myself to feel again. Of course, the ghost of the past still loomed over me. Tell him my story with the Koyawit was a difficult but necessary step. When I told him, he listened very carefully, and he said, "What you've experienced doesn't define who you are, Julia. You are incredible, and you deserve someone who treats you like that." Every day, those words left a deep impression on me. Today, I can't say what the future holds, but I know that I am stronger, more aware, and more in control of my story. And the most beautiful thing of all is that, by my side, I have friends that life gave me in such an unexpected way. Renata, Patricia, and Camelia, my soul sisters today. We continue to support each other, celebrating victories, embracing sadness. Our friendship is one of the greatest gifts this experience has brought me. And you know, looking back at everything I've experienced, I see a great lesson. Pain can destroy, but it can also transform. Life continued at a new pace. I gradually felt like a different woman. Stronger, more in control of myself. After months immersed in therapy, working with photography, supporting the girls, and exchanging ideas with the Leonardo, I began to breathe more lightly. It was as if the fog that had covered my days had lifted. But of course, not everything was linear. There were days when memories came back with force. A smell, a song, a place, any detail was capable of triggering something. But in those moments, instead of drowning, I learned to embrace the pain. I talked a lot with my therapist about this. She said, "Julia, mourning the end of an abusive relationship is complex, but every time you face a memory and don't run away from it, you become stronger," and it was true. With each wave of sadness overcome, I felt stronger. In this new phase, our friendship with Renata, Patricia, and Camels deepened. We were closer than ever. We no longer just talked about the Caire, about betrayal. Our conversations went further. We talked about work, dreams, travel, life. It was beautiful to see how, even though we met in such a painful context, our friendship blossomed in such a genuine way. At one of our meetings, on a Saturday afternoon at my mother's house, Patricia, we had a conversation that left a lasting impression. We were sitting on the porch, drinking wine, when Camila, these guys, have you ever stopped to think about how much we've changed since that night at the restaurant? We all remained silent for a few seconds. It was true. Looking back and seeing how much we had grown was exciting. Renata completed. I remember us at that table, shaking, scared, angry, hurt, and look at us now. Everyone is rebuilding their lives. I smiled. But at the same time, I felt a lump in my throat. It was a contradictory feeling. Pride for having overcome so much, and sadness for everything we had been through. So I decided to open my heart right there. You know, girls, sometimes I still wonder how I let myself get carried away for so long, how I accepted being treated like that. Patricia took my hand and said, Julia, we all think that, but that doesn't define us. What matters is what we're doing now. That touched me deeply. At that moment, I realized that I was no longer alone in my feelings. The four of us had lived similar stories, we carried similar wounds. And there, together, we were healing those wounds. The conversation continued into the early hours of the morning. We cried, we laughed, we hugged each other. It was as if we were sealing a pact of eternal friendship. After that meeting, I made an important decision. I wanted to turn my experience into something that could help other women. I talked to my therapist about this. She encouraged me. She said that giving voice to my story could be a path to healing, not just for me, but for those who would listen. That's how, with great care and self-respect, I began to write about my experience. I decided to create a small blog where I could share stories, reflections, and learnings. At first, it was scary. Exposing such an intimate part of my life was difficult, but little by little, I realized the impact this was causing. Women started writing to me, saying they identified with my story. Some were living in abusive relationships and found in my story an incentive to leave them. Others had already been through something similar and felt welcome. It was beautiful to see how my pain could be transformed into a channel of support. Of course, I never exposed details that could directly hurt the Kira, his family. My intention was not revenge, but to help other women. But the truth is that my blog started to grow, and with that, criticism also came. Some people said I should forget everything and move on in silence. Others thought I was exposing myself too much, but I knew I was doing it for myself, and for the women who needed to hear that it was possible to escape a cycle of abuse. Meanwhile, in my personal life, things with Leonardo walked lightly. We continued going out, talking, getting to know each other. He respected my time and my limitations. He didn't pressure, he didn't demand. He was patient, affectionate, kind. And that, for someone who had lived in such a controlling relationship, made all the difference. Over time, I began to feel that I could, indeed, open my heart again, but with much more awareness of what he deserved and what he would no longer accept in a partner. It was liberating to realize that I could love again without putting myself down. In the meantime, an unexpected event happened. The mother of the Kaya called me again. This time, calmer, but still emotional. She told me, Julia, I just wanted to tell you that Kayohi is completely lost. He has distanced himself from everyone. He is drowning in bad choices. I worry about him, but I know he needs to face the consequences of his actions. Hearing this brought me mixed feelings. On the one hand, it was sad to see someone self. On the other hand, it was a reminder that life takes its toll, and that I, at that moment, was moving forward with dignity and strength. After that call, I decided I didn't want to hear any more news from Kayo. My energy needed to be focused on my new life, and that's how, months after it all started, I realized something very powerful. Not only had I overcome the pain, I had transformed that pain into strength, into awareness, into new bonds of friendship. Renata, Patricia, Camille, and I were very close. Our meetings were moments of celebration of life, affection, and resilience, each one with its own story, its own process, its own achievements, and together we were much stronger. One day, in one of our conversations, Camilla said something that stuck. We thought that the Kayo had taken something from us, but in the end, he gave us something that no one will be able to take away. Our friendship, our strength, our conscience. It was true. Today, I look back and see how much I have grown, and how much I can still grow. But there is still one last detail of this story that I need to tell. something that happened recently that made me see everything in a new light. The last few months had been like a journey. A long path, sometimes painful, but also full of discoveries. I was no longer the same woman who, months ago, trembled when hearing the name of Kaiono. Today, I was a woman who knew her worth, who knew his wounds, but also recognized his scars as marks of strength. Life had taken on a new color. My blog kept growing. The messages I received every day touched me deeply. It was as if each account of one woman encouraging another created an invisible chain of support, of resistance. And I knew I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Renata Patrician Camila Conte, to be my safe haven. Our meetings no longer revolved around hurts or memories of the past. Now, we celebrated our achievements. We planned trips, projects, dreams. It was beautiful to see how we had managed to transform a story of pain into a true friendship. Leonard followed by my side. With care, patience, and a lot of respect, he helped me rediscover love. Not the idealized, perfect love, but a mature, conscious love, where I could be myself, with all my lights and shadows. Everything seemed to be falling into place. But it was just when I felt most at peace that life brought me one last test. One morning, when I opened my email, I found an unexpected message. The sender, Kyle. My heart raced. For a moment I hesitated to open it. Was it worth it? Was I ready to face whatever it was? I took a deep breath. I clicked. The message was long. He said he had discovered my blog, that I had read some posts. He said he was going through a difficult time, that he had lost some work, contracts, and that he had distanced himself from several friends. He said he was alone, regretful, and finally, he apologized. I know I have no right to ask you for anything, Julia, but I needed to tell you that I deeply regret everything I did to you. I know I hurt you in ways I can't even measure. If one day you could forgive me, even if only in thought, it would be more than I deserve. I closed the email with tears in my eyes, not for him, but for everything that message meant. It was as if a cycle closed before me. I didn't feel angry anymore. I no longer felt like confronting him or demanding anything. I just felt a deep relief. I had moved on. He was still stuck in the past he created for himself. I showed the email to the girls. The reaction was unanimous. None of us intended to respond. To Camilla was direct. He just wants to alleviate his own guilt. Don't fall for it. Renata completed. You've already forgiven yourself, Julia. That's what matters. Let him deal with the consequences of his actions. And to Patricia, with his always accurate way, said, forgiveness doesn't need an answer. Sometimes the best forgiveness is moving on in peace. I kept those words in my heart. In the following days, I reflected a lot. It was shocking to realize how, months ago, an email like that would have devastated me. Today, I felt serene. It was concrete proof that my healing had happened. To not respond to Kyle was my last act of freedom. Not because I held a grudge, but because I knew I didn't owe that story anything anymore. Life was calling me to other paths. For new experiences, for new affections. The past needed to stay in the past. And so, on a sunny Saturday, I decided to do something symbolic. I picked up a box where, on impulse, I had stored some souvenirs, an old photo, a forgotten note, a perfume. I opened the box, looked at each object with affection, and, one by one, said goodbye to them. Then I took everything to a dumpster far from home. It was a simple gesture, but full of meaning. He left there not only objects, but an entire history that he no longer needed to carry. I returned home feeling light. Our WhatsApp group received a message from me that night. Girls, today I said goodbye to the last weight I was carrying. Thank you for being with me on this journey. I love you. The responses were full of little hearts and loving words. That was it. The wound had turned into a scar that reminded me of where I came from. But it also showed me the strength I gained along the way. Today, months after this last episode, I continue building a life that is just mine. My work as a photographer is going from strength to strength. The blog has become an increasingly important space for me and for so many other women. And love, well, love continues to blossom with the Leonardo, with respect, freedom, and a lot of truth. But most of all, I learned to love myself, to respect me, to never again accept less than I deserve. And if there's one thing I want you to take away from this story, it's this. It's never too late to free yourself. No matter how hard it seems, no matter how deep the pain throws you, there is life beyond suffering. And this life can be beautiful, full, surprising. I am proof of that. And if you, who have listened to me thus far, are going through something similar, I want you to know, you are not alone. Seek support. Talk to people you trust. Don't be afraid to start over. The road is difficult, I know, but she's worth it. And in the end, you will look back with pride, just like I'm looking at it now. What about you? Have you ever experienced something that transformed you so much? Tell me here in the comments. I would love to hear your story. And if this story touched your heart, leave a like, share it with someone who might need to hear this, and subscribe to the channel. Together we are stronger, always. Thank you for following me this far.